What is up, everybody? This is Silver Spook, and let's talk about Queen of the Damned and the Great Dark Ancients, the mother of universal healthcare, Black Athena, and the origin of civilization against which the West pales in comparison. So, anyways, yeah, today we will be talking about Queen of the Damned, uh, and a variety of other movies as well as uh, history books, including, if you don't take anything else away from this, just remember the origin of all Western civilization is African. It is Black Athena is a book you should definitely check out. I'm in the process of reading it myself. And just remember that there is not a lot of civilization to this day in the West that continues to bomb, sanction, produce the most total climate change, including historical emissions, really just wrecking the planet. And if you to understand this, we have to go back into the past to see how these Eurocentric, white supremacist, capitalist, imperialist entities came to this failed state that they're currently in. How they have kind of like fallen and failed to live up to their histories. Actually, just to kind of go straight into it, because I'm trying this new strategy of just like going straight into what I want to talk about. Let's go to the mother of universal healthcare, because I said, we could start with the Queen of the Damned, but why not start in Hawaii since I'm a native Hawaiian? And we'll go straight to the mother of universal healthcare, who is Emma. Let me see if I can remember it. Emma Kalani Kaumaka Amano Kaleleo Nalani Naearuk. Okay, there we go. I didn't quite remember it, but anyways, so if you don't know, this is one of the original great dark ancients, or they're not really ancient, but 150 250 years ago. Healthcare was invented by this woman, literally invented. Since the U.S. invaded, banned our language, imprisoned our leaders, stole our land, we have the worst healthcare outcomes today. But before that, we actually had the world's first free healthcare system. The U.S. military also poisoned our water supply, and is currently going to make 1 million people's drinking water unpotable permanently. So, but before that, not only were we preserving the environment of our islands, we actually had the world's first universal healthcare system. Nearly a century. I've actually done more research on that. It's about a century until any country in the Western civilized world ever had it, which is New Zealand, early to mid 20th century. It was not Prussia. They had universal health insurance that wasn't actually universal. It was not for all people, and it was not universal healthcare. You still have to pay for it. Hawaii, in 1859, Queen's Hospital was established that provided free healthcare at no charge to the people of Hawaii. After the illegal military occupation by the U.S., there was a concerted attempt to defund and destroy the system. And more on this world's first universal healthcare system. The fight was led by Emma Kalani Kamaka Amano Kaleleo Nalani Naearuk. She believed that access to healthcare was not a privilege but a national security concern and a right. That's another black and white photo of her. She was she was a partner of an elected leader of Hawaii. Ali'i is another word for steward. Sometimes it's translated into the Western language as king, but it's not the same as a king or a queen, such as Victoria, who she was actually friends with, in a often difficult relationship as a paler Western queen who subjugated her people. Emma's people she actually talked to, just another example of the actual advanced civilization and the greatness of dark ancient peoples and women in particular. Emma actually conversed regularly with her common peoples, what were described as common peoples. She funded and started multiple schools just to make sure that everyone was having high quality educations. 98% literacy rate in Hawaii. Europe had less than 10%. Britain, Victoria was actually infuriated when she saw Emma, this woman here, eating and conversing with the help, the servants that were supposed to be like the butlers, the maids, the people that were supposed to be beneath And so that was another symbol of that was another it was another one of the irking things for the Queen Victoria of the so-called civilization of Britain. But they also had similarities, and they commiserated over the loss of children, including the loss of significant others like Albert, which was the partner of Queen Elizabeth, and Emma lost a child at the age of 4, tragically, and then a husband shortly thereafter. So Emma was one of the original OG goths. So I'm going to be talking on a goth panel later today at 5 Pacific time about being alt/goth while non-white. So this is kind of a this stream is kind of a slight gearing up towards that. This is the original ultimate goth, is the Queen Mother, 5,000-year-old ancient Egyptian Akasha. Decked in black, like literally shreds a 9-inch nails and Korn and Marilyn Manson and listening goth club in England to pieces. Like literally just incinerates them all, because that's the goth. Africa was where the original goth styles come from, and not just because the Ankh is a North African a symbol of eternal life, stolen and co-opted by white culture. But anyways, back to Emma though. So Emma's that Victorian, she actually has Victorian chokers. Speaking of OG goth, Emma actually is wearing wore Victorian chokers. Victoria in her mourning times, Queen Victoria of England, was the black mourning gowns that she would wear were the major impetus for the original goth attire that later was resurrected. Not unlike a vampire. Like Victor in Underworld from a Tomb, but it was resurrected. The goth the black and the chokers and all of that garb was a resurrected Victorian style in the late 20th century in London, and then later on in New York, etc., etc. But Emma was one of the original wearers of these chokers. She actually had one. Yeah, I believe she had one that was given to her by Victoria. Anyway, but that's just on fashion. But back to the universal healthcare. When the push failed in the legislature, she went from house to house in Oahu to ask for donations to fund a public hospital that provided free healthcare. She accomplished this goal and founded Queen's Hospital in 1859, which included a training center for nurses. This is Queen's Hospital in 1859. On the left is Kalakaua, who actually Emma ran in an election against Kalakaua in the sovereign country of Hawaii. Before the U.S. invasion, where Hawaii had the world's first universal health care, the highest literacy rate, invented submarines. Kalakaua was an elected leader and also was a masterful inventor, statesman, spoke several languages, the world's first head of state to circumnavigate the globe, visited every continent in the world, and impressed everyone where he went. Emma actually lost an election to him very narrowly, but they both did amazing things in this time. On top of the world's first universal healthcare and the highest literacy rate, invented subaquatic. He was the inventor of the world's first submarine as well. That this denied him, in the same way that the creation of a lot of Greek and Roman civilization, which is cited as the origin of British and American civilization, which is why the Greco-Roman fluid columns. In the same way that African civilizations are not credited for much of the impact, if not a lot of the plagiarism in a lot of ways, by the Europeans. The Hawaiians are not credited, certainly not in the English language, with many of their legacy and inventions and achievements, including universal healthcare. You can't find it on Wikipedia to this day, including the submarine. You don't find that on Wikipedia to this day. They don't care, because Hawaii had to be destroyed so that capitalism and settler colonialism and planetary annihilation could continue, right? Because that's the legacy of the West. Anyways, so that's just a little tidbit there. So that's the mother of universal healthcare. I think I had another short one about her recently, but let me see if I can find that one. There's a little bit more in this thread right here. Yeah. So, and the other thing that, so another thing today, so on top, speaking of removing the legacy, since the U.S. Banned our Hawaiian language, so again, like I said, that's why Wikipedia doesn't publish any of this stuff. And when I try to edit Wikipedia a bunch of white capitalist, West-centric, NED-funded editors tell me that your edits are not relevant to history. That's what they tell brown and black and indigenous people. You can't edit Wikipedia because indigenous people's successes in game dev or Hawaiian successes in the medical system that we have today that Americans are begging for and they voted for Bernie Sanders for, and then Biden threw that out the window and then wonders why nobody wants to vote for him, and he has a 30% abysmal approval rating. Well, you see, the U.S. banned our Hawaiian language, and now they ban our history from all of their textbooks and all of their so-called educational resources. But since they banned our language, we had less than 100 kids that spoke Hawaiian in the 80s, and today the children are still punished for speaking in the U.S. illegally occupied country of Hawaii today. 30,000 plus Hawaiian speakers, however, still exist now despite U.S. attempts to obliterate the language, to treat it like an ancient Mesopotamian extinct culture. They want to treat Hawaiians like ancient Egyptians, right? Which is to say, disconnected from Africa, not African, not anything to do with the Egyptian Libya, the Ethiopia, Nubia, Egypt, Libya. These are all really parts of one continuous civilization, and nothing to do. These ancient Egyptians that did these marvelous pyramids have nothing to do with these Libyans that we've bombed into the Stone Age and are plundering to this day, like all of Africa. So that's what they want to do. They try to do that to Hawaii, but they are failing. That's why I'm still streaming, because they can't get away with this too much longer. At the rate at which they are not able to feed, house, and clothe their own American Caucasian citizens or otherwise. So that's really sad for the United States and the West generally. But since the ban of the Hawaiian language, but part of the reason why they banned it is so that you wouldn't find out about great ancient successes like Emma and Kalakaua and things that embarrassed the United States. Like their abysmal 54% of the population that can't read at a junior high level in the ridiculous language that doesn't have any rules called English. Anyways, so let's look at. Let me see if I can get my my chat up here, because I gotta make sure my stream is still going. But anyways, so yeah, that's kind of the Black Athena, origin of Black Athena. By the way, if you don't know this book, is a very important book. I'm like reading it now. It's like it is greatly attacked by the Western world, which, it's not to say that because it's attacked by Western anthropology, sociology, Oxford blue checkmark historians, on Twitter. It's not to say that that's a guarantee that it's going to be super based, important, and actually true, unlike everything in the West. But it's a high chance that it will be, because they don't that's the reason why you should study Hawaii and Libya, is because those are two places that the U.S. has couped. One of them far more violently, with much more tonnage of C4 equivalent Tomahawk missiles, French and American. That's Libya. Hawaii, less direct bombing, although the U.S. military has its number one world empire headquarters at the Indo-Asia Pacific Command in Hawaii. So that's still that's still on the number of drop bombs that have been dropped in Hawaii is actually incredibly high. If you look at all the bombing in one day, they dropped 15,000 pounds of C4 equivalent on Mauna Kea while we were up there trying to stop the U.S. from bombing our sacred Hawaiian mountain. So, but in Libya they drop the bomb on top of your non-white head, right, to bring about freedom and democracy in Libya. You should read Black Athena though. You should definitely check out Black Athena, which is a book by Martin Bernal. And it's a book that is about the actual history of the world, not from the lens of whitewashed capitalist, professional slavers, genociders, military propagandists, and liars and plutocrats, right? Which is what the entire U.S., British, and European Union is all about. So this is actual history. In its first 3 volumes, because all history in the West is doctored and full of lies, right? Like Thomas Jefferson, the fact that Thomas Jefferson had 260 slaves and was a rapist and a child molester and a terrible person that plagiarized indigenous peoples, such as the Iroquois. Right? They don't put that in history books in the West. So, anyways, they prefer to just celebrate their war criminals in the United States and Britain and Australia. Black Athena has been heavily criticized by academics. And again, we have to qualify that. The Martin Bernal actually studied in and was expert on Chinese history as well. But actually went to China and was studying there, as opposed to like Bill Hayton, a blue checkmark that's constantly attacking a Vietnamese woman on Twitter, asking to see your hands and other creepy, pervy things like that. Bill Hayton, a blue checkmark Ivy League school graduate, right, is an expert on Asia without actually speaking a lot of the Asian languages, and simply writes U.S. State Department propaganda to justify turning Vietnam into Ukraine, basically, as a hammer to smash against China and Russia for the CIA. But anyways, but Martin Bernal actually like tried to study like from a you can never be perfectly arbitrary, but from a more neutral perspective, the history of the civilizations, and was severely attacked for this book. But the book, they call it a pseudo-historic book, proposing an alternative hypothesis on the origins of ancient Greece and classical civilization. Now you say it's like, but you know what that's like though. You know what that's like, right? When the great leader of Western civilization, that is Wikipedia, that doesn't include the mother of universal healthcare because Jimmy Wales is a liar, and he's a billionaire that works for white supremacist plutocratic empires like the United States. The guy who owns Wikipedia. Do you know what that's like though? That's like when the Navy said they have difficulty, maintaining alternate narratives, right? Such as Captain Cook, right? Captain Cook Town, right? Deserves to be called Captain Cook Town. Why is the town in Hawaii, Ka'awaloa to be specific, need to have a white supremacist British colonizer who so terribly overstayed his welcome that he got his butt cooked? Why does Hawaii need colonialist abuser murderer captains, right? Terrible captains have Hawaiian towns named after them. That's not really necessary. That's only necessary to erase the original Hawaiian culture and people and place names. That's why Captain Cook Town replaced Ka'awaloa. That's why Cook County replaced the original county name. That's why Alexander and Baldwin, right, is a huge corporation, and there are many locations that carry those Baldwin, Alexander. There's a McKinley High School for President, right? McKinley. Pop quiz: who's President McKinley? Not just an American president. He's one of the many war criminals that has run the so-called free country of the United States, and is also the person who is credited with this line: "We must have Hawaii to help us get our share of China, to plunder Asia, along with Africa, the Americas, and the Pacific. And Hawaii is the platform." So why is there a McKinley High School? It's the largest high school by student body in Hawaii. Why is the largest high school in Hawaii named after this racist white destroyer, genocide committer? Denationalization in whole or in part is genocide under international law in the United Nations. The banning of language, the printing in the language of the occupant, which they did. They banned all Hawaiian print and all culture. We had the largest per capita print in newspapers, Bibles, agricultural books, technology, science almanacs, you name it. They banned all Hawaiian print. They banned all the symbols of Hawaii, and they had forced patriotic education in English to destroy Hawaiian culture. Why does this person have a high school, McKinley High School, in the country of Hawaii? Right? Because there's no truth in the West. There's no truth in the West, and perpetual diseducation of my own people, of Native Hawaiians, as well as Black American people in the United States, or African people in the United States, or however they want to be recognized. brown people in the United States, indigenous people in what's called the United States, and indigenous people in so-called Canada the Indian has to be killed to save the man. There can never be history in the West because it would destroy their ruling classes. Now, it would help actually all the people of whatever color, but those people have to be formed into disinformation-filled stormtroopers perpetually. Otherwise, they wouldn't sign up and put blue and yellow flags in their bios and take $50 from their meager minimum wage check and send it to the Ukraine to buy some more Lockheed Martin junk missiles and broken Northrop Grumman tanks and misfiring javelins so that the U.S. military-industrial complex CEOs can make a lot of money and you can go bankrupt, right? They need a bunch of idiots in the U.S., Europe, Canada, New Zealand, Australia who think that they're smart because they can say big words because they have an overpriced 8-year degree from a crackerjack box called Cambridge, Oxford, Princeton, Yale, or Harvard. And that's really sad. Anyways, so Hawaii is the linchpin of U.S. military strategy in Asia Pacific. In case you didn't know this, I just want to reiterate. Hawaii is the linchpin of U.S. military strategy in the Asia Pacific, and this is actually this is from 10 years ago, so it's actually expanded. It's the Asia Indo-Pacific region, and it's more than 50% of the world's surface. Asia and the Pacific together is by far more than half of the world's surface. That entire, it's plus the Indian Ocean, it's more than half of the world's population. Hawaii is the centerpiece. It is the like the golden peak of the pyramid of Apocalypse in X-Men Apocalypse. We just watched it last night, and I'm going to get to that later. It is the central nexus and the focal point. But it's also the unarmored hole in the belly of the beast, actual beast that is the dragon smog that is the United States. Hawaii is the linchpin of U.S. military strategy. It is the command center of a transnational garrison state, according to Walden Bello, from its headquarters in Honolulu. The Asia Indo-Pacific Command and the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Pacific Fleet manage a vast network of overseas bases and enforce U.S. hegemony in the Asia-Pacific region. Hawaii is also served as the staging area for the U.S. wars in Vietnam and Iraq, as well as Afghanistan, Korea, you name it. The vast majority of America's wars are waged from Hawaii, which is why, just another reason why, as you probably know if you follow me, the end of the U.S. illegal occupation and respecting of human rights of Hawaiians, like not banning our language and punishing children by putting them in the hallway, and not undoing their illegal coup, can't come any sooner. But anyways, let's go back to Great Dark Ancients. Okay. Anyway, what I'm trying to do now, I'm trying a new strategy of front loading all of my videos with more of the content, and then expanding out in a more front loading the central thrust to the beginning of the video, and then expanding out later on. Anyways, the origin of all civil. So Queen of the Damned. I haven't talked about Aaliyah yet, which we probably should bring up at some point. I've talked about the mother of universal healthcare. Black Athena, and the origin of all civilization against which the West pales in comparison. Let's see, where should we go next? Let's go to a little bit back to Black Athena, because we didn't really talk too much about this. Black Athena is a book that is basically contending that Greek civilization, right? When you study history in the United States, like I did, right? I went to a $20,000 a year Ivy League feeder school, right? Which is to say a garbage school, because they don't teach you anything of importance except how to say big sesquipedalian words like sesquipedalian and seem like you know what you're talking about. That's what they teach you in the U.S. and the Western schools, especially Harvard feeder schools. That's where they put out all the Bill Haytons. That's where they put all the NYT journalists and the writers for Hollywood scripts, which are all professional cinematic fictional lying. I'm sorry, everything in the West is fiction, not just the Hollywood movies. Also their textbooks in public, private, and charter schools. But Bernal rejects the theory, right, that is taught in these schools and also in their movies. X-Men. I'm watching all the movies that cite Greek, Roman, or especially Egyptian civilization. So X-Men Apocalypse. Let me just get them up on the screen. X-Men Apocalypse. The character Apocalypse. Ancient Egyptian. Like I've done 3 separate streams recently. One of them was on the alienization, right? The alienization of indigenous successes. And this is going out to a broader point that I'm going to make. One of the recent videos I put out was the of course West-centric anthropology in Age of Empires, which is a West-centric interactive real-time strategy game that is deeply infused with West-centric conceptions of the evolution of human beings, what makes human human, from hunter-gatherer to bands, plucking berries and throwing spears at deer, and then throwing spears at each other, depending on the noble savage or savage myth that the West decides to portray today. Tribes, chiefdoms, and states. But Egypt is central to Age of Empires as well, just as another example of this. But X-Men Apocalypse, right? Also, right? It deals with the I'm trying to find that one. Yeah. And then you have Stargate, right? Stargate is X-Men Apocalypse let's go back to Stargate is in which you have a science fictional ancient alien civilization, right? Or the last survivor of this terrible ancient race of transgalactic, warp Einstein-Rosen bridge building Type 4 civilization, million-year-old ancient race, are capable Type 4 Kadashev civilization or Ra, the last survivor, is credited with the feats of actual African black peoples, like the Egyptians, the Nubians, the Libyans, the Ethiopians, which are all part of a larger civilization that gets compartmentalized into Egyptians here, whiteified with Elizabeth Taylor's portrayal of Cleopatra, along with many other things. Ridley Scott's terrible movie Exodus. I mean, I love Blade Runner. Fucking why is Christian Bale playing African people, right? Stargate alienizes those successes by crediting them to Ra. Like many Ancient Aliens is a so-called documentary on Netflix, right? Like I went off about that. One of many. This is again, I often bring up, this is not just stuff you can chew popcorn to while trying to recover your lost spoons working full-time in capitalism in America or anywhere in the Western world. Ancient Aliens and Stargate, these are not just entertainment. This is your education. This is your conditioning. This is your indoctrination. On top of your so-called history classes, English, sociology, anthropology you took in college, and your public and private and charter grade in high school education, this is your education when you're watching these things. But you as I often make my point, it's through osmosis, just being absorbed into your mind as you're being entertained, right? It's just like you're gaining this picture of the history of the world, a little bit at a time, drip fed, right? Like Ayn Rand wrote the Motion Picture Association Screen Guide for the Preservation of American Values. Hyper individualism and capitalist free enterprise in particular, and that's what Hollywood has done, is carry out the CIA's bidding for the or just the ruling class plutocrats bidding for the last century. X-Men Apocalypse. So if Stargate, I'm going to kind of tie all of my videos together now. If Stargate is about alienization of indigeneity, saying these black African people are savages. That's what the NATO still says about them, right? The civilized European countries, or Euro settler colonies like the United States and Canada, do not commit genocide. This is literally the answer they gave. The head lawyer of NATO said this to Libyans, African peoples, when they asked for what hospitals, what schools may have been bombed in the U.S. invasion with France of Libya, the illegal war of aggression that NATO conducted in Libya. And the NATO lawyer said only savage countries commit war crimes. NATO commits no war crimes. We're not going to give you anything. So the Stargate is about alienizing Because if African people are rightfully credited with great feats of engineering, of language, of writing, of sculpture, of art, of history, of societal organization, of technology, of astronomy, of mathematics. If the mother of universal healthcare isn't Emma, there was another actually very very good contender. It was the Bimaristan of the Middle East, which is again a non-white region in what's called Iraq, Syria, that region now. Right. All of that actually in one time would have been part of. Could be considered a part of what is known as Egypt, but it's all really Ethiopian, Egyptian, Libyan, Nubian civilization. But in that ancient, I think it was 1200 AD. It's 1200 years ago. There were hospitals that gave free healthcare to people of all races, of all religions, of all genders, free of charge, under Muslim leadership. And those, you don't hear about those. You don't hear about those too much, do you? No, we don't hear about those very much. But similarly, that access to the healthcare would be another feat of North African and the Middle Eastern and Near Eastern peoples, right? But so anyway, so Stargate is about saying that some alien came from space and taught these primitive, savage, barbaric people how to build pyramids, how to speak, how to use language. It was nothing to do with any achievement of Africa, because that, and as I said previously, this is not just entertainment. This is very important. This is actually the most important thing the West and the Western colonial plutocratic capitalism has to do. White supremacy is absolutely vital. There's a dollar sign attached. It is $450 trillion and counting, transferred from the global South, from Africa, from the Americas, indigenous peoples' territories, from Asia to the global North and to the global West. $450 trillion and counting. The colonies are not gone from Africa. Niger is still sending billions of its dollars worth of its uranium to light 1/3 of France's light bulbs and the Pigalle neon and all of the Eiffel Tower's glittering lights comes from Africa, along with billions and trillions of dollars that's still flowing up. So this international subjugation and savageization, really, of Africa in print, in books, in history books, in every classroom in the Western world, and that includes Europe, by the way. It has to Greek and Romanify its history and separate the Greek and the Roman, as Thucydides wanted to do. The other Greeks disagreed with him. He wanted to break Western civilization away from African and from Eastern civilizations and say we are separate, and we don't need to credit Africa with the multi-tens and hundreds of trillions we've stolen from them, which means repatriation. There's a dollar sign how much Europe owes to Africa and needs to pay back, to build concrete equity, which is China's concretely mutual win-winning equity into Africa. But the North, right? This is not just like fun and entertainment. This is like the real world, rubber hits the road. Where is that money going to go? Where is the trillions in your banks and your corporations and your 401ks and your German retirements and all of your nice little suburbs going to go when you have to repatriate it? Maybe, well, it's not like you're going to lose your suburb. You might just, maybe your billionaires will have to be a little less billion, and you might have to lose a little bit of your standing temporarily as you repatriate your wealth to the Africa that you keep calling savage, and to the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island you keep calling savage, and to the Hawaiians who you ban the language of, and to the Asians you call sick men of the East and backward, authoritarian, tanky, something gross and false. Alienization of indigenous speech is critical. It is one strategy. The other strategy is, what was the other one I was going to point out? So X-Men Apocalypse. So I'm kind of gearing towards X-Men Apocalypse. X-Men Apocalypse. It's a good movie. We just watched it the other night. James McAvoy, great performances all around, right? Nice to see a mohawked, actually black Storm. I mean, not to say the Storm was never not black in the movies, so I take that back. But it's nice to see a black superhero, at least in a comic. X-Men is one of the least bad of the American white person originated comic books. But my opinions on the Avengers, with billionaire philanthropist arms to the playboy Elon Musk incarnate into a cinematic universe into Iron Man, and of course the United States Empire and the military-industrial complex embodied in Captain America saving the world, which it absolutely doesn't. It's one of the ultimate lies. The West, which is manufactured largely for the last, especially for the 20th century, the US's imperial hegemony and dominance and disinformation of its population has been maintained through cinema. Britain's was a print empire, and the U.S. is through cinema, now through AAA, now through interactive entertainment, gaming, and social media, but largely cinema, television. The Boomer generation was a TV generation, and they were the one that had to watch all of the cowboys and all of the World War II films that lie about America saving the world by defeating Nazis when it funds and funded Nazis. Funds Nazis in the Azov Battalion today, and Mujahideen far-right extremists in the Central Asia, and historically funded and backed Nazis and the KMT and the Japanese fascists. But anyways, until they came and bit their hand a little bit. At Pearl Harbor, X-Men Apocalypse is a movie that also erases the successes of indigenous feats. Not the movie's not about that, to be clear. It's just in the background because all of Hollywood is about, the ultimate goal is not to entertain you. The entertainment is the tasty nugget while you take the real pill. The real pill is that Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Hawaii, as I said, the global south is just a bunch of who cares. And if anything, savages, terrible people. We should probably overthrow them all, especially Bolivia and Libya. And absolutely, we're gonna have to come for Vietnam soon, because they have all the rice and the food that we don't have because we don't grow anything in America and we're falling apart. Anyways, the X-Men Apocalypse is a movie that takes the it is one of a multitude where the indigenous peoples of North Africa, right, their successes, right, are erased and credited to mutants. Okay, so if Stargate is about alienization of indigenous feats, the background narrative of Apocalypse, right? This is nothing to do with the other things going on in Apocalypse, but the background narrative, Apocalypse himself, I like. He's also plays Moon Knight, right? The Apocalypse actor, what's his face? Oscar Isaac, right? Who plays Apocalypse does a really good job playing Apocalypse. But the background, the meta narrative behind that is that the origins, right? The origins of Egyptian civilization is a transcendental, the original mutant, right? 10,000 years ago, 30, 50,000 years ago, whatever it exactly is, who can transfer his consciousness from body to body to body, has absorbed the power of thousands, potentially, of other, X-ray vision having mutants, teleportational mutants because he can teleport, mutants that are capable of like transmuting, performing basically long distance alchemy and turning solid concrete into sand. And then Apocalypse repeatedly installs human ornamentation into the brickwork of Cairo walls. He just like puts people into walls or into the floor when he visits Magneto, and takes all of the Polish bigoted, fearful metal workers and drops them into the ground and kills them all. So Apocalypse, but that's very entertaining and sense of wondery and very comic book action, punchy, fun stuff, and But the important thing to the West is that whatever it is, whether it's aliens, whether it's and Apocalypse, it's part of the story as well, right? Let me see if I can get a picture of that pyramid. right? Part of the story is that Apocalypse himself is the one who is credited with construct. He builds a pyramid in 20 teens, right? In New Cairo. He is one who is credited with teaching and building and establishing the great civilizations, right? Look at these images, right? So again, the important thing is that whatever it is not black people who did anything great. It was some ancient mutant. It was some weird other person that came in. It was an alien that came in and either taught, built in Stargate, as I brought up before. It is Ra who teaches, gives the African people the technology, the ability to read and write, and then takes it away from them. Says, and he abolishes reading and writing. That's the thing that America does to people like Hawaiians. It's not really a thing that I don't know any aliens personally, so I can't really say what they would or would not do. But the people who ban their own people from reading and writing, it's Europeans, right? Like the people that were upset at Queen Emma of Hawaii for having a 98% literacy rate. It's the Europeans and the Euro settler colonies like America that ban their own people from reading and writing and becoming literate. So they can just watch a bunch of shitty movies and learn that the U.S. is what freedom and democracy and human rights comes from. Right out of Biden's butthole, right? That's where freedom comes from. So, because everyone's illiterate. Not that it helps being literate in the West, because you're going to read a bunch of bullshit in your university. So, Apocalypse is credited and also is somebody who wants to subjugate. There's actually a lot of similarities between Ra. I mean, I love the Ra character just like aesthetically and for what other things that it represents. But Ra, I've gone off about Ra from Stargate like many times. I have multiple streams involving. But Ra's character, like X-Men Apocalypse, is someone who is, also wants to subjugate, destroy, control everyone, stops people from reading and writing, bombs, and is a wrathful god / emperor, and kills people for disobeying at the snap of a fingers. If people like think about not following Ra's will, Ra sends his legions to go fire missiles and blow up the town, killing random people. Everyone lives in perpetual fear of an authoritarian, tanky, non-white leader, which is very important to the mythology of the United States, particularly in the 90s when it was, like it often is, overthrowing, getting Americans and Europeans and the West to back coups and military campaigns through AFRICOM, et cetera, et cetera. The Congo was happening at this time. 5 million Africans were dying because of European and American intervention, or Euro or Euro settler colony interventions into Africa. In the same time, they're making a movie about how African leaders, if Africa, because part of this narrative, right? It's about, again, discrediting the feats, into projecting them into aliens, right? Projecting them in Stargate, projecting the feats of non-white peoples into aliens or into mutants, as in X-Men and Marvel generally, or projecting them into the Queen of the Damned is going to be interesting. We'll discuss that later. But in the case of, and certainly if they have any successes, right? And if they do become empowered, there's another thing going on there, which is that whenever, the other one, Xerxes, that's the one I wanted to talk about. So whatever successes non-white peoples have in Africa, especially, whatever successes they have, whatever civilization they have, right, that gets them out of throwing spears at each other, like the Queen of England's partner used to say till he died, that Nazi piece of shit. His name was Prince Philip. So until Prince Philip died, he used to say things like that. But if they ever come out from throwing spears at each other like a bunch of backward savages, like the NATO lawyer likes to say, then like Zack Snyder, right, who is a fascist eugenics backer, right? That's what he literally said things like, he wanted to have disabled people shown in a negative light. He talked about the worst thing in the world is a giant gay queer man You said that's the most terrifying thing I could think of, is just having queer man who might want to just come and have his way with you. I mean, there's a lot of discourse that always comes up every LGBTQ plus month about how those are the real predators when who actually is it. But anyways, so there's a lot of queer phobic, there's a lot of racist, there's a lot of nonsense when it comes to Zack Snyder movies generally. But that's because that's what the United States is about. Xerxes is the leader in 300, a movie about the Greek. What is 300 about? Again, this is going back to the what Black Athena is talking about, which is about the West's attempt to sever the ties between Greece and Rome, force you to study ancient Greek and Roman history. And so these are our origins. These are our white, non-African, non-Eastern, non-Muslim, non-Asian, non-dark continent origins. These are our great, right? 300 Greeks, right? Let me see. I want the movie poster, right? The great 300 Spartans. These are the white, very straight men. They're very straight. They're very white, and they are not eugenicists. They are they are about perfecting their species. They're about perfecting their race. That's why the Romans, and there's a scene where they kill the baby for being imperfect, right? There's mal-shaped babies, and there's a mountain of skulls, right? And it's about, so this is a celebrated movie. Everyone loved this movie. Americans love this movie, especially dudes. American dudes love this movie when it came out because it was a very Western movie, but and part of it is about making sure that we understand that the point of Black Athena is saying Athena was black. Wisdom itself and all the knowledge, Athena, the goddess of wisdom herself, right? That which, and symbolically, that which all wisdom, technology, civilization flowed came from Africa, right? And 300 is about going, no. What came from Africa was a bunch of gay, non-straight, degenerate. Because when they show in 300, when you show all of the Xerxes' dark Persian army, right? They're a lot of like orc-looking people. It's kind of like how the Azov Battalion talks about killing Muslim orcs as they grease bullets with pig fat to make sure they go to hell. In an extremely racist, literal Nazi way, because the West is Nazi. And so Xerxes' army, let me see if I can get his army. Xerxes' army is filled with, people that look like orcs. There are a lot of, of course, they're Muslim, but they're diverse, which is in a bad way. Like they have the fallen great Greek, the great Greeks. Degenerate, disabled person that looks like Quasimodo and is discarded by the Greeks. There's many things happening that. Let me see if I can find that 300 disabled character. This character who is Ephialtes is a villain. Ephialtes is discarded by the Greeks for being disabled, for being misshapen, not being perfect, right? Not being not. I'm sorry. Not. It's not like the West is all about skin color, face shape, and bodily perfection, and it's literally killing disabled people, including Canada. That's just pretending like COVID's gone and denying access to basic healthcare for disabled people and not treating them properly, right? It's not like, and also if you can't work full time 8 hours a day in capitalism, well, you can go be homeless and die. It's not like that's Nazi shit, right? This character is discarded by the Greeks, the Spartans, for being disabled. Goes over to the Persians because they accept him. He works with them. And then he comes back at one point. Ephialtes comes back and says, he tries to make right with the Spartans. But in the end, like there could be like a redeeming arc and go like, well, maybe being physically disabled doesn't mean that you're a bad person, but in the end, it reifies this eugenicist, Zack Snyder himself and Hollywood by extension, reify because they allow this to go through. It's totally fine for Hollywood because they're Nazi. They promote Nazis like Azov Battalion and Mujahideen. That's why they make shitty movies like the remake of Dawn of the Dead, Captain America, and Iron Man movies. You know, that's making sure that you are okay with America bombing the whole fucking planet. This character comes back, but it turns out that he betrays the Greeks again, kind of like reifying this idea that being physically disabled means that you are morally disabled. You are ethically unfit. Being physically disabled is a degeneracy. It's very 1800s colonial rhetoric. You know, it's very phrenology. It's very Western science circa 1850, 1870, which is that Chinese are degenerate, debaucherous, deleterious. All the women are prostitutes of the basest order, and the Chinese and the Asians are a fallen race. The Africans are a savage fallen race, and their genes have degenerated. Their bodies are misshapen. Their faces are misshapen, and their misshapen faces and bodies and skin also reflects in their morality, and that's why they are addicted to drugs and they're smoking and they're poor. They're poor because their genes have fallen. And their bodies and their disfiguring bodies. It's not because we leave them in environmental cesspools. They smell bad because they are degenerate genes. Not because we, American, Southern and antebellum, Southern slave owners and then antebellum racists, keep them subjugated and definitely into slavery, keep them living with pigs. They don't smell like shit of pigs because we keep them living with pigs as racist American slave owners of black chattel slaves. No, it's because the African genes have fallen and they emit the smell based on some genetic, it's an African gland that's evolved to emit the scent of swine. That was the science of the West in the 1850s. Oxford, Cambridge, Yale, Harvard, and Princeton professors of anthropology, sociology, biology, and other disciplines made entire careers and funded and their nice, luxurious homes in New York, London, and later Los Angeles, or in some suburb in the middle of Michigan. They funded their entire lives writing that and selling that as science. So that's the quality of science that comes out of the West as well, not just the history. And so this character is killed, or is seen as fallen for not being eugenically. This comes, and again, this is not just hearsay. This is vital to the continuation of capitalism itself, premised upon the continued absorption of 7 billion people and 90% of the world's surface. Again, all those other continents I'm talking about, into the global north, into London, the city of London and its corporate towers and its private equity firms, and New York City, into Los Angeles, Tokyo, as Japan collaborates in dual colonization as well of Okinawa, and as a major projector force into Eastern Russia and China. Historically, tens of millions killed in the communist, tens of millions of Chinese communists killed by Japanese, until Germany, like Japan, just bit master a little bit, bit the master empire a little bit, and then America said, well, that's not acceptable. But without this continued racist, eugenicist, ableist, imperialist justification, now some people will go to war because they just want to go to war, obviously. But a lot of people with some kind of morality in their body, which a lot of people do, there needs to be extra demonization and extra explanation, right? Because people are going to read history, they might do a little research in the West, right? And you have to have you have to have multiple layers of narrative for the people with no diploma, with a high school degree, right? That's like the Republicans. People or with a college degree, that's the liberals. They have another slightly more complex but still false, illusory Western historiography, right? That's why you study Greek and Roman past. If you just fall asleep in grade and high school, that's the best. Then it's easy to just, okay, kid, now you're highlighting receipts at Walmart, and you're selling meth in Texas. Get in this Jeep Hummer and go kill some Iraqis. It's the easy one. The harder one is, you have a degree in environmental science or science, tech, engineering, and math. Well, read all of this Greek and Roman history and watch these MSNBC news reports, and then program the drones that we're going to send to blow up the preschools in Iraq. That's the harder one. That's the liberal narrative. It's a little more complex. Still false. the simple narrative is, but ideally they want you just to be illiterate. It was much easier for the Western imperial racist settler complex to get its way when everyone was a uneducated peasant. But the problem is you can't build Lockheed Martin jets without at least a few slightly more educated peasants. That's why people. You can't have Boeing 737 engineers making fucking F-35s, F-16s without some level of education. But you don't want to give them any political, historical, economic education. That's why all universities teach science fiction in this economics department. Ask Michael Hudson. So, anyways, but back to 300. So with Xerxes though, coming back to the Xerxes character, Xerxes similar to Ra, all right, similar to Ra in alienization, similar to Amun-Ra in Stargate, similar to actually Apocalypse, right? Well, not only are these all Eastern and Persian individuals, two of them are pyramid builders, right? But Xerxes, like Ra and Apocalypse, are terrible, absolute authoritarian leaders that are terrifying. They're brutal. They oppress you and your freedom. They are like the people wearing a mask in the Starbucks, right? Saying, "Hey, can you like wear a mask, please, so that we don't all die from a pandemic," right? But that's what when somebody tells you anything, right? As a great Westerner, right? As a great American, as a great European, who are mimicking America today. They have freedom rallies where they say no tyranny. They have like don't tread on me snakes in Belgium and in Germany and France because they're all basically puppets of the United States. And all of their right-wing uprisings are directly inspired by a lot of it by the U.S. and funded by them, certainly, as much as they can possibly do, so they can plunge Europe into the darkness and make a lot of money selling you overpriced fracked gas, where you can get cheaper Russian gas. But anyways, in Xerxes' character is this, it's archetypal, deep psychological training to like see anything that tells you what to do as Eastern, as Eastern, as Middle Eastern, especially in the 2000s. That's why there are a lot of Middle East centric movies coming out. This and Middle East centric rhetoric and news, and they talk about the scientific Sam Harris made a huge amount of Sam Harris. He was the most celebrated intellectual in the Enlightenment 2.0 conference. I remember this. I don't know if everybody saw Beyond Belief, Enlightenment 2.0, and his major contention, right, was that in this was in the 2000s. Sam Harris's major contention, you might know him from, he wrote a book about neurodiversity, about how women and people of color have lesser brains. He's this guy, again, like as a professional, pretty word lie spewer. That's what they give you degrees for in the West, right? In Harvard and Yale, and accredited universities. Sam Harris's speech was about how in the 2000s, now it's about how women don't deserve to have jobs at Google or at Amazon or whatever, but in the 2000s, his whole thing was for the new metal people who are upset at their Christian quiverful parents, right? And this metalheads and new metalheads and all of them are goths, right? They're like my right wing oppressive North American Christian family, disown me for being gay. I was like attacked in school. I was bullied. I was bullied in school, but not specific. I wasn't born in North America, but it was a part of the West of the North American experience in the post Gen X and millennial era. Was this kind of swing back of atheists, right? New atheists kind of rhymed with new metal. Starts with NU. I don't know if the new atheists called them. And I think they had to pretend like they had any kind of academic credibility, so they called them NEW instead of NU metal, so that you can pretend like knowing how to spell words in English makes you a better person or smarter. So it doesn't. So Pidgin English is a valid language in Hawaii. Anyways, fuck, English has no fucking rules. Sam Harris posited that the ability for all of his job was to make sure that the Christian right Republicans that were making money for the actual rulers of the undemocratic, actual authoritarian, tanky, in like Northrop Grumman's tanks, tanky countries, the United States, they make broken tanks. Russian tanks actually work, like the PT-76 that kicked America's ass in the Vietnam War. But speaking of communist victories over Eastern victories over clown Westerners, but the U.S. is the king of making broken fucking shitty weapons, just like they're king of making broken fucking shitty history books. Like the THAAD missile system they try to sell to Korea, and the broken missiles Patriot missiles that cost millions of dollars to fail to intercept a $10,000 Taepodong Chinese missile. But anyway, so Sam Harris' job was to sell to the masses of new atheists coming out of the in the late 90s and noughties, this new reasoning to go to war, right? It was like, oh, you don't believe in God? Well, yeah, I don't believe in God either. Okay, so me and Richard Dawkins and the four horsemen of the Christian apocalypse. I'm not saying that Christianity is some great religion. The Christianization of entire countries Christianization was another major vector for colonialism and also for manufacturing war. We actually have to fight these non-Christian countries, because if we don't, they will spread their dark, wrong religions. But Sam Harris, the atheist version of that, manufacturing consent for colonialism and imperialism and war, was Islam. Religion is bad, yes. Religion is unscientific. We can disprove God. God is dead. Just like the Marilyn Manson song told you 5 years ago. And now you're out of high school and you're a fourth year in college, and I need you to design Lockheed Martin missiles. At least the U.S. State Department and military industrial complex corporations are paying me, Sam Harris, to go turn you into a American warrior with engineering, science, and technology characteristics. So this is their story. History, our civilization, Western civilization, is great. Now the Christian part, not so good. Yeah, fair. Religion is wrong. Religion is bad. Here, take this book and throw your Richard Dawkins New York Times bestseller at your mommy and daddy who abused you. Take my Sam Harris book, The God Delusion, or that was Richard Dawkins. I can't remember. I can't keep all these new atheists straight. Throw this at your pastor and rage against the machine and be really mad. But also, you know what's worse than Christianity? Islam. Muslims are absolutely, they are terrorists to the core. Their entire religion is based on suicide, and it is fundamentally hateful and racist, and we have to cleanse the world of Muslims. That's what Sam Harris got up on a stage at a scientific forum next to Dr. Ramachandran, one of the forefathers of treatments for neuroscience, treatment for phantom limb syndrome, and a really expert surgeon and neuro scientist and cognitive scientist. All these other brilliant physicists, cosmologists, computer science, artificial intelligence specialists. And Sam Harris gets up there, and everyone is, oh yes, we have to cleanse the world of Muslims. Absolutely, Sam. I'm a neuroscientist. Again, the Western world is fucking, it's ridiculous. And a lot of the non-white scientists are like, oh, absolutely. We have to go to war in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Iran, 7 countries. Absolutely. We have to rid this world of this religion, because we are smart, genius scientists, and we absolutely could never be led astray by a bunch of a billionaire-funded CIA think tanks. There's no possible way, because we're so fucking smart, because we have rational minds. That's part of the lie of the West, is that there's a rational mind that supersedes all of this this spiritual mumbo jumbo and all of this human emotional irrationality, and it's not, it's false. The humans are imperfect beings who have to try. That's why Eastern and indigenous thinking, dialectical thinking, is so important. And if you, to the extent that science functions, it's because you're practicing that kind of thinking and not being led astray. Like when everyone was led into fucking 7 years, spending $21 trillion, so you don't have healthcare, housing, or any roads, and 70 million people suffering from malnutrition, and the planet is falling into permanent ruin, and scientists are getting themselves killed by cops on the streets of the United States trying to stop the climate apocalypse, right? But no, because scientists, everybody was like rallying and all for this. Well, almost everybody in the United States, including the liberal, educated university community, were all rallying behind this. There's like one guy on the stage who was contending this. I remember Scott Atran. He was like an anthropologist, and he also worked with and for the intelligence community, so he kind of knew what they were doing. Anthropologists who lived with like indigenous Amazonian tribes and also studied the actual history and how the actual process of terrorism occurring, which is based on the subjugation. I remember it was actually in the same conference. It actually is kind of important. He's American French cultural anthropologist and also emeritus director of research of anthropology at the Center of National de la Recherche Scientifique in Paris. Anyways, he was the only person, like one amongst all these genius American and European scientists, and not Indian scientists, but they were all speaking English, so that's a problem. You're in the Western orbit. He got up on stage and he said, we terrorism isn't coming from, it's not just because the religion of Islam is hateful and horrible and these people are just inherently terrible. We should bomb them all into smithereens. He was like, what we have to do is we have to understand that like it's actually soccer clubs are the number one predictor, but it's not the soccer. It's the point. It's not soccer clubs. It was groups of people that are incredibly marginalized, particularly in Europe, where they're 15 to 20 times more likely. The Arab people, non-white Muslim people in Europe, right, that facilitate that enacted the Paris bombing, are incredibly impoverished, and by an extension, the peoples of Africa, the people of the Middle East, these people are being bombed, they're being crushed, they're being destroyed by the West and the United States, and this is causing deep hate, this rage at the Western countries. Destroying them is what is causing the grist for the mill to fuel this resentment that results in a lot of these attacks, right? And by extension, what does that mean? That means, well, if you want to stop you want to stop 9/11s, maybe you should stop bombing, sanctioning, force under developing Africa and the Middle East and the rest of the world that's non-white world, right? But he was shouted down by the scientists of all the greatest scientists in the Enlightenment 2.0. He was shouted down. He didn't shout it down, but he said that. It was like, what is wrong with all of you? I'm like losing respect for all of you here. I'm losing respect for all of you, of the pinnacle of the intellect of the United States and Western civilization. Like, have any of you any idea what you are even talking about? No, you don't have any idea. You turn on your CNN, you turn on your Rachel Maddow, you turn on your Fox, you listen to the Near testimony with your 8-year degree, you do your neuroscience, and you come home and then you sign up for this war and then you thumbs it up. You're giving $50 to Ukrainian Nazis. You're all gung-ho and raising money to free Tibet and free fucking East Turkestan movement so they can have a fucking caliphate. I'm sorry, a free and liberal democracy that respects women's rights, which they actually destroy women's rights. What is wrong with you? The answer is everything is wrong with them, and only the CIA and like the monarchs of the 1800s are privileged to an excellent education. Not an excellent education, but access to true information in the case of the West. And when was I pointing at that? So that whole campaign in every so it's not just TV, it's not just your public and private and charter school history books and sociology books and every book you read. It's not just the New York Times bestseller list, it's the entirety of academia that is deeply complicit, knowingly or unknowingly, of the project of white supremacist colonial imperial plunder. And a lot of the reality is, if you are sitting, at least in 2000, in a nice cushy suburb teaching at NYU, you are doing better than the average Libyan or Syrian or Iraqi or Afghan person, right? So you are doing better in those places. So even if you think, oh, maybe there's something wrong with this, you're not about to give up your nice cushy job in your professorship that might have a tenure track. Now for Gen Z, there's not so much tenure track, so there's a lot less buy-in. That's one of the major differences between millennial and Gen Z, especially the new Gen Z, Gen Z Plus, or whatever they call it, Gen Z, Gen Omicron, because they're all gonna die from Omicron virus soon. if you don't fucking wear your goddamn mask. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that Xerxes authoritarian? Gen Z doesn't buy into all of this nonsense because they're not being paid enough. You know, they're being paid $7 an hour to answer the phone for annoying boomers at a hotel somewhere in the fucking Four Seasons. Going, who is? I was talking to my partner about this. Holly was, don't you know who I am? I don't know who you are, sir. You're a boomer white guy who wants luxury seating in this hotel. You want the penthouse suite. I don't know who you are. You're supposed to know who I am. The people at this hotel know who I am. Well, I just got hired because everyone last summer got sick from COVID and died or moved on as they lost their job. So I'm the new Gen Z worker answering phones at this hotel, sir. They're not being paid enough for any of this shit. And if you have a professorship, college professors, 70% now, I think, are food insecure. It was 50%, now it's closer to 70. What good is that? You know, the Gen X were the last generation that could sit around in a university, spout bullshit for a living, pretend to do research, you know, contort fentanyl molecules, phosphate and nitrogen bits to make a new constellation of atoms called Safenil and sell that as the next internal opium war against America's population to enrich pharmaceutical billionaires. But other than making better opium to kill your own people with, designing Lockheed Martin missiles, what are they going to pay you to do in a university? Nothing. They're going to pay you nothing, and then you can maybe try to get a meal card from one of your college students to eat today. What college professors are so fucked today. You might want to pay them a little more so you can keep your hegemony. Xerxes is an authoritarian leader in this movie. I'm not saying that historically, whatever historically was or wasn't, it's very important to portray Middle Eastern leaders. This is part of Xerxes is about portraying Saddam, about portraying Gaddafi, about portraying all of the leaders of Libya, of Syria, of the Middle East and North Africa as horrible, despotic. Definitely not like American presidents and U.S. corporations. Those are really free and they just love everyone. They're just really peaceful people, right? But the people in, like, especially Gaddafi, because he brought universal health care, free education, and free housing, all newlyweds. Upon getting married, and if about to start a new family, you got a free house, free apartment, large apartment, a free apartment in Libya. So it was about painting all non-white, non-Western compliant, non-imperial, imperial colonial power compliant leaders as horrible, despotic, probably also gay, which is bad to the Western world, especially Zack Snyder. Abusive, full of degenerates, and just full of slaves. Everyone's a slave. The U.S. and France brought slavery back to Libya. Actually, it wasn't Gaddafi. It was actually Americans that brought slavery to Libya, not a autochthonous or a locally grown leader. So Xerxes, you have anyway. Yeah, so I lost my train of thought a little bit. So Ra similarly enslaves everyone. So so there is erasure of indigenous success. There is horrible authoritarian, unfree dictatorship with forced labor. You hear all those words all the time. The propaganda starts to get thin when they keep repeating it too much. So they have to have better propaganda writers come rewrite their Xinjiang propaganda. Authoritarian, horrible dictatorship. It's about if Africa, right? If Africa is ever able to get itself off the ground. Now, again, this is like I might even dress up as Rob, but it's kind of this thing. It's like it's like one of those things where like Republicans go, do you want a world where there are people from the world coming into Canada and the United States, and there's queer people everywhere, and free accessible public transportation, and local clinics all over the place. Is that the future that you want? And there's green and there's no fossil fuel. Is that the future you want? And everyone's like, why are these Republicans threatening us with a good time? It's kind of like part of it is like evil is queer, evil is green, and it's like what? I mean, I'm not saying that just because, you could still be like, Pete Buttigieg and be a gay person that's also doing the imperial plunder for the Democratic Party, or, or Kamala Harris, who is a non-white woman who's doing Obama, also a non-white person, doing the bidding of racist imperialism while being that. But like, it's a weird, I've talked about that a lot in other streams, but there's a weird and queerification of all evil in the United States, for sure. Especially in the 90s and in the early 90s. But anyways, but if Africa ever gets off the ground, if they ever internally take control of them, take their own destiny into their own hands, they will be terrible. They will be so terrible. They will be brutal. They will enslave. And not only that will they be terrible, they will come, if Africa is capable of building internally their own wonders like pyramids or whatever else they build, right? They need the West. Niger needs France, right? Niger needs France to help it, guide it, right? That's what, as Vijay Prashad would say from Tricontinental Foundation, who I cite for that 450 trillion stolen from the south to the north. You have a colonial mentality. You like to lecture the global south, right? But, that's part of it. You need the lecture. Senegal, you need Macron to come down and tell you how to do healthcare, infrastructure, and housing. You need Senegal. Every Senegalese pays money to France for the privilege of being francophone. Literally, you have to pay so you can speak the colonizer's language in Africa. Not just Senegal. Senegal, Libya, every country that has it. Mali is not happy with this. That's why they're kicking French military out now. But you need us. You need the great Europeans, descended from our wondrous ancestors, the Greek and Roman. You, dark people of Africa, you need us to come down and tell you how to not be authoritarian. Get some human rights in your Libya. That was Hillary Clinton and Macron's justification for that invasion. You down there in Congo, you are not very civilized. You need to have more freedom down there. Why isn't there more freedom? We're going to put another leader inside your country. Make sure you have a little more freedom down there. Free all of your public nationalized coltan, copper, lithium, rubber. Why isn't it free? Free it up, or we're not going to give you a WTO loan or IMF. We're not going to support you down there with this usurious, This is very important. These movies and these narratives are so important to maintain in the minds of people even in the minds of IMF loan designers who believe they're doing a good thing. Somebody has to sit there and write a bunch, like 500 pages of nonsense about how African countries have little freedom, human rights. Look at how poor your children are, not because you've stolen all the fucking wealth, Germany, France, Britain, US. Somebody has to write all this nonsense whenever you do one of these fucking neo-colonial actual debt trap loans, right? And they have to believe, because who is gonna, nobody wants to believe they're a terrible person, right? But if you have this narrative in everyone's mind, in National Geographic, look at this starving African. How can we help them? The purpose of Starbucks is so that privileged Prada-wearing iPhone covered with the blood of dead Africans on a ship into a Indian, a Mumbai fucking sweatshop that put that phone together. Starbucks is there, so all the blood-covered minerals and sweatshop labor that you are taking advantage of, when you go in there and you look at that starving African kid and you Venmo fucking $3, or you every sale of this $10 cinnamon chai Captain America latte goes to some poor African child, so that you feel better about the horror that you know you're doing as a liberal with at least some kind of education. You know there's some poverty there, but you're doing your best by giving 20% of your coffee revenue, your coffee budget, to this African child. That money that you have, you stole from that African child. You owe them a lot more than that 20%. You owe them equity, along with, not just you, everyone in the West, obviously. But you feel as though you've gotten out of that. Now, if you're a right-winger, you again, the people with less than high school or high school diploma, Then it's just like, well, fuck those people. I don't give a shit. Fuck those people. I'm gonna go. I'll bomb them and take their oil just because they're less than me. I took the oil. But if you have some kind of conscience, and usually people with some kind of ethics and morality, they might have gotten to a higher level of degree. You need those people to write the NED grants, to write the blue checkmark propaganda that's going to go start the next war in Libya. You need those people to be programming the jet engines, to be repairing the to design the artificial intelligence for the Boeing 737 Supermax that crashes. But I mean, maybe you might fly a few of them someday. So you're going to need people to do that work, to program the Facebook algorithm to push Bolsonaro into power, to funnel massive amounts of Breitbart and right-wing media into the Americans, and then liberal right-wing media to tell everyone that Agnes, the Bolivian U.S.-sponsored fascist for Elon, we could whoever we want, is a good person that's going to cleanse Bolivia of their right-wing, authoritarian, Trumpian narco trafficker named Evo Morales, who is actually an indigenous socialist that actually is more based and actually more successful than Bernie Sanders, along with the movement in Bolivia. So people have to be, that's a lot of time and energy you have to invest into learning how to program. You have to have a little level of education. So these movies and these narratives about the world, right, about the history of this earth, and the terribleness of if Africa ever came to power, because they're all despotic, backward, authoritarian, and how we have to save them. We have to save them. France has to save Senegal. The U.S. has to save all of Africa with AFRICOM, and all of your little fucking Starbucks donations, and all your little, your National Geographic. Look at this emaciated, skeletal child's body standing in a mud hut, right? Oh my God, I have to help them by giving more of my money and revenue and time and resources to the NED, to the U.S. NGO, this and fucking that, and Bono's fucking concert. That is incredibly important to maintaining colonialism, is these stories. Fictional, cinematic, fictional, and non-fictional. Everything's fiction, but presenting non-fictional, let's say, called history books, and then presenting fictional, called movies, games, comic books, fiction books, etc. It is incredibly important. It's actually like one of the most important things, actually. And this narrative of if Africa gets back on track, they're going to be terrible, is central to that. That's what Xerxes is about. If Africa or the Middle East, if the Middle East ever self-determines, if it ever comes into its own independent of Western human rights, freedom, democracy ideas, like they invented it. They didn't. Indigenous people have more democracy. China has 50 times more freedom than any American, but you would never know that because there's no education. Cuba is freer than you, but they're the authoritarian hellscape. Libya was freer than you from the material conditions. They had more women's rights actually there in a lot of ways. Women were actually Afghanistan as well before America's interventions. And the narrative that we need to save them because otherwise they will, if they become powerful, they will become terrible. They will oppress women. They will forcefully insert IEDs into the children to genocide their ethnic minorities. That's what Canada does to the indigenous women, by the way, indigenous 9-year-old girls. They will rise if China comes to power. They will invade California and bomb all of. They'll send missiles into New York City and they'll kill us all. Absolutely zero evidence of any of this. Who's the one with 800 bases across the world? Who's invaded and committed more war crimes every year than any other country by far? Who is literally, right, ending this planet with its military climate emissions? Never mind its bombs. Who is funneling and backing forever war in Eastern Europe at this second, right? But if any non-white country ever builds an independent country, an independent policy, an independent economic situation outside of a Western Eurocentric orbit, Euro or Eurosettler colonizer, the U.S. is the largest Euro country. The U.S. is the largest white country in the world. That's what it actually is, right? It has 250 million white and another 330 million altogether people identifying as part of the United States. Not all of them do, but they're all counted within that. But there's 250 million white people. Germany has only 60 million. Britain, I think Germany it's like was it less than 100 million. Britain, 60. France, I can't remember the exact population, but these are all small. I mean, the EU altogether has more population, but the US is the largest single Euro Western country. That's what it really is, and it's also based on extermination. It is based on very recent and continued extermination of indigenous people and slavery of other indigenous people called African peoples. So it needs, it really needs, and not by it, I mean it's ruling class. It as an entity, the United States, and the EU's leaders, they need this. Now again, the people of the United States and the people of Europe and the people of Canada, the people of Australia and New Zealand, who are not in power, they could really benefit in the longer term. In the shorter term, the upper middle class of Europe and the US might fall some. But the reality is, I mean, a lot of people are they're falling rapidly, especially when you're running out of electricity. All of the things are rapidly declining anyway in this 2020 time, right? This would be a harder sell in 1990 or 1980, certainly in 1960, what I'm saying right now. But for the 2020s, everybody's watching their inflation go through the roof. Their gas, the $20 for a gallon of milk, you got the gas prices going up. Now, some of that is due to, of course, corporate plutocratic, hyper speculation and false inflation, because they can set the prices. But there is a underlying material reality, which is the running out of colonial plunder as the non-white world, as the East and the South do get out from under this extraction, and it's really about the top 0.1% needing to extract more and more and more and more, as their Rome is on fire, grabbing all the chandeliers, right? As their building is on fire, jumping out of the USS America with a golden parachute, right? The USS West, really. Jumping out of their building like a stock trader circa, 2001. They're jumping to death. But, people that are like bailing out of 0809 financial crisis, trying to get as much of that wealth into some commodities. It's part of why the price of rice is going through the roof. But all of this is about it is a falling apart of the system, which is good, right? But they still, to their end, they have to maintain, as things are falling apart for the so-called Western civilization. It's Western barbarism. That's why I call it Western barbarism, because it's not civilized, right? It's based on plunder and mass murder and stealing and death of other people. So if they don't maintain the narrative as long as possible, it's as an example, just imagine the EU and the United States said, oh, by the way, all of colonialism was completely immoral, unjust, and Africa is full of great and new nations. Senegal and Akon City is going to be the most renewable, has all indigenous African-inspired, let's look at Akon City while I'm talking about this, right? Africa is the future. Akon City is just one of many other cities working with China. They are coming out from the history of colonial plunder. They are building great and new advanced cities independent of the United States with win-win cooperation, gaining technology and economic development. And we should really withdraw AFRICOM. France and Europe. France, you should get out of Senegal and out of Libya. Germany should get out of Namibia. And we, the United States and all of the European countries and Canada and New Zealand, we should all pay Africa $100 trillion, right? Let's just pay. Let's repatriate to all of the African people and all of the people who have descended from slaves, all the indigenous peoples. Let's take, and a lot of that, what that's going to come? That's going to come from Elon's 180 billion. That's going to come from Mr. Bezos's hundreds of billions. And but also a lot of you average upper middle class white Americans and middle class white Americans, you're not gonna have two Hummers. You're gonna have less than one. You might have none. You might have an African built in collaboration with a 5G company in China, you might have a self-driving not a Toyota. You might have a self-driving Chinese car. That's what you can have. You can't buy Hummers. No more mansions, because we're gonna repatriate all of America, and all of Europe. No more tours, no more tourist vacations. Because number one, we have too much COVID. Number two, we're burning all of our climate's fuels. And so we, America, Europe, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and especially the whitest and richest of us, the most privileged, we're going to give up 80, 90% of all of our wealth, repatriate it to Africa. Can you picture the US and Europe saying that right now? Because that's what they would have to say to come clean on this. We're going to repatriate all our wealth from all of our voting population, which is scared middle and upper middle class white people. All of our native, like Deutsche Bank descendant Germans, all of our French, Marine Le Pen worshipping, Viva la France, and I'm talking about the racist France that still plunders Senegal. All of the Americans that are scared of Black Lives Matter banning CRT, we're gonna tell all of our white voting middle and upper middle class Europeans and Americans and Canadians to give everything up. Are you? They're never going to do that willingly, right? The ruling classes that run the West are never going to do that willingly. They're going to fund their far right to the fucking bitter fucking end, or the liberal right to the bitter fucking end, and they're bullshit right. They're never going to tell the truth about what's happening in China, which is the world's most advanced civilization. That I'm not going to go over that one again at this point, because you probably know it, but. That's what it would mean. It would mean talking about this. It would mean talking about the fact that, you know, the country that is currently leading in the world's biggest particle collider, in the world's fastest computer, 30 trillion it would take in 1 millisecond. The Chinese quantum computer can compute what takes 30 trillion years for an American or European computer to compute. Leading in space, leading in renewable technology. The Chinese are the first to make human stem cell via chemical reprogramming a possibility. So they can actually create universal stem cells that can help to cure an entire litany of diseases. Leading in biotechnology, leading in all actual science. The West doesn't really lead in science. It can't build a fucking plane to save its life. It can't make a javelin missile to save its life. Leading in 5G, the cities of the future that have they have AI that doesn't target black and brown people. The Chinese are not only using AI, not only the Chinese have AI that makes the most advanced Western cyber technology and artificial intelligence look like kindergarten. That's quoting the Pentagon cyber chief. They also are using these more advanced AI for much more efficient, much better things, like not for putting more black people in prison, which is what the US AI is used for, to target use AI, feed it bogus American policing racist data to target more black and brown people, to choose to not give mortgages to Hispanic people, right? To find migrants at the border and people living in houses based on their Hispanic accent with their security phones and their homes and their nests, spying on their house to determine if there's more Spanish accents, and they send that to ICE. That's where a lot of the money is coming from. It's from the prison, police industrial, military industrial complex, using AI for terrible, self-destructive purposes, full of racism, capitalism, to make robot dogs to go beat up homeless people for the U.S. police force, right? That's where the AI is going. That's where the robotics is going. Whereas in China, they have robot dogs that people can just ride on and have a fun time. For disabled people to get places, the AI is taking trillions of dollars of global shipping in the world's largest and most used ports in Shanghai, etc., and fully automating them, enhancing the speed of train times, getting everyone more access to the world's largest high-speed, extremely low-carbon emitting train network that's in China. And China are helping Africa, right, with non-debt fucking based non-debt trap loans. Akon has personally said, I will not fuck with America, but I will fuck with, he's personally said, I will not, as an African person, that he's Senegalese, he said, my mother grew up in Africa. When I was born, my mother was reading by candlelight. She had no electricity to read her books. 20 years later, I came back to Africa, expecting with all of this Western aid, with all this help from France, America, Britain, right? All this billions coming into African continent, into Senegal, right? My mother was still, they saying they're going to give electricity and productive development and lecturing the Senegalese. And still, my mother was still reading by candlelight. No electricity. No, never mind the internet. Never mind high-speed access to all of the world's science, technology, engineering, math, so you can rapidly advance. That's how Bolivians got so intelligent and educated. I mean, I'm not intelligent, but access to such information is because the Chinese launched $1 billion satellite to help them rapidly leapfrog over using cellular technology, 5G technology, and the phones. They didn't need laptops and PCs, which is also what the Chinese and the Russians also were helping Libya to do before America and France bombed into the Stone Age and plundered all their resources. Akon says, I will never work with the U.S. again. There's no hope there. They only want the end of Africa, and they want to stand on our graves and suck all of our resources out. I will work with China. He says, his literal quote was, I fuck with China. When somebody asks, what do you think about the Chinese? Are they harming Africa? He's like, no. They've given me they've helped me we've co-invested hundreds of millions to start building these future cities. And building, not really building for the first time, restoring advanced African civilizations that have existed and have been forced, underdeveloped, and broken and destroyed and plundered by the United States and by Europe and by colonizers. And it's not really about, for the first time, Africa becoming great. It's really about restoring a former greatness and former civilizations and restoring the Silk Road that connected, right? Restoring the Silk Road that connected Asia, Africa, the Far East, the Middle East, the Near East. I know that people don't, that's not the best term for it, but it's about restoring the networks that were that built the most advanced win-win cooperative civilizations, that invented black powder and the paper that Americans wrote their plagiarized, the stolen Chinese paper and the stolen Iroquois constitutions that Americans wrote their document that founded of their founding fathers and their genius intellectual political magnum opus. Both the paper and the ideas stolen from two separate indigenous peoples in Turtle Island and one in Asia, right? And the black powder that they came back with on their opium war gun, the black powder was stolen Asian technology. So my point is that all these civilizations, this is a deeper, longer point on all of the extremes, but these have all existed pre what the Euro and the Euro settler colonies call the advanced enlightened civilizations, right? They love this word enlightened. So the word enlightened also stolen from China as well. Like enlightenment under Buddhist, under Confucian, and other Eastern philosophy is a term that was stolen by the United States and by Britain and these places, and was never implemented. Because there's still, you have to watch. The other movie we watched this week was Doctor Strange. And this is like one of the better movies because at least it's not as hubristic as fucking Iron Man, and it's not directly tied. It's not Elon Musk, a billionaire white capitalist man, cis straight man, running a company and blowing up the rest of the world and being celebrated as the savior of the goddamn universe with the highest grossing film of all time being the Infinity Wars, where literal fucking Iron Man saves the American cis straight white man billionaire Elon Musk crossed with the Koch brother saves the whole fucking world. But Doctor Strange is a stuck-up cis straight white dude that's a fucking asshole, and he calls people bachelor degree because they don't have enough American degrees. I mean, if you have a PhD, you're actually getting stupider in America and in the West, because you know more wrong things, and you're more confident in spewing your incorrectness. So it's actually a waste of your time. But Doctor Strange comes to an understanding that, oh my God, I have a lot to learn, right? But part of and he does go to the East, and he's like reading Sanskrit, and they have some of that. I wish it wasn't a white person that is the ancient one, that's the ultimate enlightened guru, that's throwing around multiverse, mirror universes, and spiraling through 25,000 fractally recursive versions of Doctor Strange's hand and dropping a lot of acid. Basically, people dropped a lot of acid, and then they made this movie. Either that or they put Marvel Studios through a kaleidoscope. What's that? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I gotta get off soon. So, but I bet but at least there's it at least it like points to the east, and then he has to have kind of his ego broken, So I will say that, but it also doesn't really, it can never really fully say the truth about what the, because for me, what I was thinking about this yesterday, I was like, the most important lesson that the Ancient One tells Doctor Strange, right? The ancient white British lady who whitewashes, is a whitewashing of Asia generally and the East, tells Strange, and and the Ancient One tells Doctor Strange, the greatest lesson you have to learn is it's not all about you. And that is a great and amazing lesson for a Westerner, But that's like preschool, for indigenous people. That's just like common. That's not an astounding new revelation that I've arrived at the top of Mount Everest, taken like 70 years of study, had to go through this amazing trials and tribulations, defeated Dormammu, the multidimensional dark verse, fucking a lawnmower man in space with better, computer rendering software. It didn't take me fucking fighting Dormammu and kicking everyone's ass in the universe and reading 10,000 books in an ancient tome in the East, led by a Westerner for some racist reason. Indigenous people just understand that they're not the center of the universe. Indigenous people, Pacific, Turtle Island, and a lot of Asian people too. They just understand that we are all interconnected, and everything isn't all about us. It's about Aina, which we are a part of, and it is our mother. This great revelation for the Western mind, which Captain Mr. Doctor Strange is like the epitome of the. I read so many books. I have a photographic memory. I got a PhD while I got an MD. It's like what is it with this? What is it with all these fucking throwing around your Harvard, Princeton, and Yale accreditations? Like, Hulk with his 7 PhDs, Iron Man with his genius Galaxy Brain S10, fucking genius white brain that invents himself out of caves. What is it with these Western fucking nerds and their comic book movies and their genius? That is not this, but oh my god, it's not all about me. That's like the equivalent of 1 + 1 = 2 for indigenous people. And then from there you learn other things, And that's also for the East. It's not rocket fucking science. It is for the West though. It is absolutely. So but so it's kind of like it's like that part of Blackbeard, like in Blackbeard in Blackbeard's Our Flag Means Death. Where there's that scene where the indigenous Blackbeard, played by Taika Waititi, with an asymmetrical Mad Max jacket with an exposed tattoos on his left arm, right? Or his right arm, I'm sorry. And he's talking to another, because, indigenous people of the Pacific, we did master wayfinding and navigation, right? Using only the stars. We navigated through 2/3 of the world's surface thousands of years ago, right? Our wayfinding techniques are one of our pyramids, If the pyramids are like one, and this is just one, by the way, it's not even the great. This is just one of the great achievements of the peoples of Africa, the indigenous peoples of Africa. One of the great achievements of the indigenous peoples of the Pacific, including my native Hawaiian ancestry, but all of us, we're all related, is the wayfinding techniques that established where we were able to sail thousands and thousands of miles across open ocean to tiny little specks of land, 1 foot off of these, 1 foot above sea level, half a mile long, called atolls. And we could navigate like we were walking in our own house, right? Like Malpialag would go from Guam, from Satawal to Guam, thousands of miles just to get a pack of cigarettes, just for fun. It'd be like taking a walk down this, like taking a walk in your yard, And that was one of our great achievements, right? That has been attempted to be brushed over by Thor Heyerdahl. White guys getting lost on rafts with PhDs from accredited Western universities. He was a Norwegian, or he's a Scandinavian. And to prove that Hawaiians were not capable, and indigenous people of Pacific
island people were not capable of navigating. So I'm going to get lost on a raft. He got himself nearly killed to prove as an anthropologist that this was how it was Native Americans from South America just getting lost on a raft and winding up by being blown by the wind accidentally ashore on Easter Island or Hawaii, etc. And again, that's part of this erasure of all indigenous and all non-Western, non-white feats, so that we can justify building military bases all over your Hawaiian islands, because you don't know how to manage them. We will do it for you. Edward Teach's character, right, Taika Waititi's character, is telling one of the white sailors, "Hey, you look at those clouds. You know they look like frankfurters. Do those clouds look like frankfurters to you?" He's like, "It's the Izzy Hans character." He's like, the guy in the background here. He's like, "Hey, you know those clouds? Those look like frankfurters." He's like, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?" Right? And he's like, "No, those look like hot dogs." And later on, it comes. The guy's like, "You're unhinged. You don't know what you're talking about. You've lost your rock. You're off your rocker, Blackbeard. You've had one too many of Mr. Steed's silk perfume. You're just high on your boyfriend. Anyway, so that's a long deep lore. You gotta watch the show. But the indigenous Pacific Island, what he's trying to teach is that this is part of how this is our technology of how we have become master navigators, is understanding all of the aspects of nature and the interconnected currents and the shapes and the formations of clouds as part of the natural system that we are in, as part of the Aina and the Honua, the world. That's a Pacific or Hawaiian word for the world. That's how we are able to accomplish these things, is by understanding our interconnectedness, not just to each other and to plants and animals, but to the natural world. And in part of that is understanding the waves and the clouds and the movements of the wind. And these specific clouds signify the oncoming of storms. These, not just the stars are a map that allows us to pull through Kilohoku. It's another word. It's a word for the wayfinding and navigation, to pull islands toward us based on our positioning in the Great Moana, the ocean, right? But this if you want to actually become to navigate the oceans and to outwit and outsmart and outdo the French and the British and the Spanish navies, like I do as Blackbeard, it is about an indigenous wisdom and indigenous heritage, right? But it's like, but to Westerners, it's like, oh, I don't, either denial, I don't understand it, or it's just magic, right? And they're like, how does he do this? He must have he's like some kind of eldritch supernatural entity with his beard constantly on fire, shrouded in smoke. We can never see him and find him, right? It's kind of almost metaphorical in a sense about how Blackbeard is never where you think he is. Whenever you think he's somewhere, he's vaporized into a cloud, right? He literally disappears into a cloud of fog. So the kind of this kind of magical mysteriousness, and it's always he's never full presence, right? Is his ability to just disappear, which is how he evades the British Navy, right? In the show, and also historically, he would do that. But it's not magic. It was just simply indigenous science and indigenous understanding. And importantly, what I wanted to say was, for the other members on the ship of Blackbeard, right? Fang, by the way, if you look at Fang, right? Blackbeard's fellow members, right? Like this guy Fang. So we can get Fang and Blackbeard together. They're often not right there, but the guy he looks kind of like Asian or Pacific Islander. He might be Chinese, Maori, or he could just be Maori, because a lot of us kind of look part Asian. We are all descended from Asia as well. At least part of the migration comes from Asia. But anyways, the guy on the right, everyone else is like, oh my God, it's the Great Blackbeard. It's the Great Blackbeard. How is he able to? He is like a ghost. He is like a supernatural entity. He's just able to disappear. He knows exactly when the rain and the storm is coming to hide from the Navy. He knows how to turn himself in this ship into a lighthouse. He knows he's like a master of the seas. He's like Doctor Strange, right? Like the wizards of Doctor Strange, the Eastern, the indigenous Asian knowledge. It would seem mysterious and magical to so-called advanced Westerners. Right, looking at their medicinal techniques like acupuncture and all of these other methods, including their ecological understanding, including their paper and their black powder. That was, oh my God, how can fire come out of nowhere? These Asian Easterners are magicians, they're sorcerers. How are they? The Chinese are, well, this is science. It's KNO3, it's saltpeter combined in a 30% with 30% saltpeter, 30% sulfur, and 40% charcoal, and then it creates this combustion reaction. But you're saying it in Chinese, and like, oh, ching chang chong, and a bunch of racist white people go, oh my God, he's talking in a cuckoo caca language. He's a sorcerer. He's a witch doctor from China. They're just like, no, this is science. This is science, you idiot Westerner, racist. This is my indigenous science from Asia. It's called black powder. We use it for celebration. Gungi fa choi. Have some firecrackers. Let's scare away the demons and the bad spirits. Let's shoot some beautiful, red and blue and gold. Antimony creates red fire. Titanium for sparkle. Oh, it's sorcery. Oh my God. This is the Westerners, right? Let's take a bunch of Chinese slaves and figure out how these little witches are making this fire. And then let's use the fireworks. Let's use this sorcery from China to kill everyone else and make guns. And then they came back to China. What it was just, you're taking indigenous science. How can you do this, Blackbeard? It's just an indigenous science. Well, it's culture and it's spirituality, but it's also science. This cloud and this part, these aspects of nature are symbolizing a storm is oncoming. This ocean current symbolizes this swell plus this swell at the same time symbolizes there's storms in this region. I can tell by listening to this, the knocking on the side of this boat, that I am, approximately in the house of, I'm 7 days down from Maui's fish hook, or Hokulea is in its zenith point. Therefore, I am on the latitude of Hawaii. Oh my God! How did you know you were in Hawaii? He's a genius. He's a sorcerer. No, it's just indigenous science, but you're a racist. And you deny, right? What are you doing? You're erasing the successes of great, dark, ancient peoples. I didn't talk about Queen of the Dam at all. I'm so sorry to Aliyah, but and it's almost 1. I gotta get out of here. So, but importantly, the thing I didn't say was that Fang does not get surprised. As another Maori person, everyone else is amazed by Blackbeard, but Fang is just like, oh yeah, Blackbeard is he's disappearing and he's arriving because he is just doing, it's like kindergarten for me. I mean, we all know what he's doing. That like my headcanon for this whole show is all the indigenous people, because they go to an indigenous island. They go to like an island with the indigenous people of the Pacific. It has reservation dogs, indigenous people playing the chief. And they're like, hey, can you stop? They tell the white Euro colonizers, can you stop killing and stealing our people? Because we've had like 7 different massacres from your Euro ships on our island, just slaughtering us. Can you stop doing that, please? All right? They're not asking for, we want to take you over, but just stop. Can you stop committing genocide? And then, but all those people, they're not, they all know what navigation is, right? They all know that those hot dog looking clouds mean storm coming, right? Because everybody knows it. But the outside, it's like, oh my God, it's so mysterious, wondrous, super, and that's kind of my thing is like, to the Western mind, it's like, oh my God, everything isn't about me, like Doctor Strange, and I can like be part of nature and the natural world that I don't fully understand. And I realize that I have to like what if I lost my Strange, but I can't keep all my fucking tabs straight, but I it's not all about me. Oh my God, that's such an amazing, no, that's not amazing. That's just basic. Oh my God, you mean I should wear a mask because I'm not the center of the universe? I should protect other people from COVID-19? Oh, you mean that like, if we all work together and it's not all about me and my personal clout, capital, and pride, we can build socialism and have like unionization that leads on to worker cooperatives and everybody working together collectively for the common good against the landlords, the bosses, and the CEOs and the imperialists above them. Oh my God, that's fucking genius. Oh my God, I have this. No, that's not genius. That's just basic indigenous existence. That's just basic. But for the West, it's like, oh my God. So anyway, I gotta get off here. So I apologize to Aaliyah The Queen of the Dam is a movie. I have to go talk about this another time. um, rest in power as well. But the Aaliyah is the greatest of the vampires, and is the queen. You should look up the queens of actual Egypt, like Hatshepsut. Uh, the Candaces. The name Candace comes from the great ruler and also generals who fought on the front lines. The queen mothers of the North African great civilizations who fought on the front lines, for their own people. And as Britain was coming into the area that is Libya, Egypt, Sudan, that whole region, it's really not just Egypt. That's just one piece. It was the Candaces, the women leaders of Africa that fought on the front lines. When even the men were saying we should just give up, these British are too much, we can't stop them. It was the women leaders that fought, the African women leaders that fought the hardest and kept fighting to protect Africa against the colonizer invasions from Europe. And so, the Queen of the Dam also sets all. I have a whole Twitch stream about the Queen of the Dam, so you can refer to that one. But finally, she is an ancient, Akasha is an ancient Egyptian queen of North Africa that is the mother of all vampires. So actually, this one is one of the ones I have the least problem with. At least. And although they do turn her into a terrible authoritarian dictator who wants to rule the entire world like Apocalypse, incinerating everyone. She doesn't like killing everyone and wants everywhere to run. All of the streets and beaches and roads and farms should all run red with blood, other people's blood. So it still has that dark people will become terrible authoritarian savages. They'll become terrible authoritarian savage rulers. There's a little bit of that going on there, but I mean, you need somebody to be the bad guy. But why is it always the fucking Ra? Why is it always the Ra is the space authoritarian non-white emperor? The Akasha is the vampire authoritarian bloodthirsty terrible non-white emperor dictator, and then you have fucking Apocalypse is the Egyptian mutant authoritarian dictator. It's always that, it always comes back to that. And then Western civilization has to come and save Africa from authoritarian dictatorships. Vampire, mutant, alien versus predator. I was actually Alien versus Predator. Ancient pyramids also built by super intelligent alien races that come down on starships and unleash aliens into the world through and all the Cambodia, Egypt, and Maya. Asia, Africa, and the Americas, all of their pyramids were built by aliens, the predators, taught them to build, and then use humans to get them all killed. And it's always fucking aliens and always pyramids, man. No, it's racism, it's colonialism, and it's fucked up. And also one of the OG goths was Queen of the Damned and Aaliyah. Rest in power. That's the end because I gotta do my goth panel later on today. I should probably save some energy for that and some voice. Neofeud is a game that is on Steam and itch.io. It is a game that does support everything that we do here. I've been gesticulating a little too much too. I threw my back out, just going like waving my hand around like I'm like I want to slap Iron Man and Doctor Strange in the face, especially Strange in the first 20 minutes, and I threw my back out. Anyways, Neofeud is a cyberpunk adventure game that I made. It is on Steam. It is on itch.io. It's a game that is also available. It's also a game that if you leave even a very short review for it, it is greatly appreciated because it does increase the likelihood that people will discover this game when they are browsing on itch and on Steam. It's like Detroit Become Human without a giant AAA capitalist entity run by a shitty dude. And also, it's not like this. It's like Disco Elysium, but more cyberpunk. And Neofeud is also a game that, as I said, supports everything we do here. You can also find Neofeud. I have so many tabs open, but I'll close some of them eventually. Better close a few right now because I might crash my computer. Okay. Neofeud is on itch for Windows, Mac, and Linux. It is a game that you can get DRM free on itch. You can get it on sale. You can also support everything we do here. As an indigenous, Neofeud is one of the wonders of the world. It is the greatest cyberpunk adventure game, and I'm not joking about that. I mean, literally, Neofeud is it is incontrovertibly the greatest cyberpunk adventure game in the world, bar none. Like handcrafted, a cyberpunk masterpiece. It's been too long since I played the game with this much soul in it. I can't find. There was a review. Somebody said this is the greatest and funniest cyberpunk game on Steam, but I'm just it's up to you to decide that. But Neofeud is a game that was created by an indigenous person, myself, doing the writing, the music, the art, and the programming, and half of the voice acting over the course of about 2.5 years. And why hasn't it yet reached 1 million purchases? I don't know. I chalk that up to colonial erasing of indigenous feats. I'm semi kidding about that. I don't have access to the capital to be able to afford a marketing team and a publisher. And also, I was rejected because Neofeud talks too badly about white supremacy, capitalism, and imperialism. And literally, publishers said, you can't say those things you said about those political and business leaders in the United States. They said, you can't say those things in Neofeud. We can't publish your game. So I said, okay, well, I'll tell the truth through video games without a publisher. So it kind of literally is because of racist colonialism and imperialism that the game isn't more known. Because if I could get the front page on Steam and I had a marketing team and somebody to promote the game for me, so I didn't have to do it myself, like at the end of this stream, more people would know about Neofeud. So I guess it is a wonder of the world that nobody knows about because of racist colonialism. You can also support Neofeud as well. You can support what we do here as well if you would like by picking up other games such as Decolonators. Decolonators is a game for Windows, Mac, Linux, and Android, and any system that has a internet browser. Decolonators, where you kick capitalist colonizer butts out of Vietnam in retro arcade game glory, starring Luna Oi, a Vietnamese, an indigenous woman from the global south, also directly undoing those culture erasers and then building their own realities, right? In the global south. Woman is a book by my partner Holly E. Argent, a woman raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity. It is not a historical retelling, but a work of fiction, and it is about dunking on a lot of these people that we're talking about, and it lends a different perspective than what is usually read. Woman is also a book that you can get for free, or you can get it without paying, or you can give us a little bit of economic support so we can keep doing what we do here at the Silver Spook Cooperative. Also, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Neofeud, where you can support all of the education that we do here, as well as housing, feeding, and clothing we're at Silver Spook Cooperative /Hui. It's a Hawaiian word that means worker cooperative, housing cooperative, or political action or other collective action, right? As opposed to individual action, because that's not some great amazing PhD level lesson. It's basic, right? But you can support the Silver Spook Collective by giving us support here, as well as you get access to the Silver Spook Discord when you become a patron. You get access to behind the scenes on Neofeud 2 and other games and projects we're working on here. Oh yeah, look at that. We're over the $500 mark, so that's really good. The next goal is 1,000, and every that we get, it goes back to, we have 5 people here, by the way. So there's myself, Holly Argent, there's 2 Keiki or children, and also Positive Synergy, that all of this goes to help house all of these people here in illegally occupied Hawaii. Silver Spook Games at Octodon.social is on Mastodon, where I have a presence. Mastodon is a non-capitalist, federated, open source social media platform like Twitter, but without billionaires, Wall Street executives, DC think tank clowns, and Silicon Valley moguls deciding what you see and what you don't see. However, while we have access to the Death Star satellites, you can also follow at Silver Spook Guy on Twitter, where I talk about stuff, and I talk about how the U.S. military continues to poison our Hawaiian drinking water, and the remainder of Oahu's drinking water is filling with salt, which will mean irreversible end of potable drinking water in Hawaii, on Oahu. 1 million people live there. So if you want to learn more about that kind of stuff, and other my personal takes and stuff, Silver Spook Guy. Silver Spook Games is the other account where mostly it's gamers related stuff like Neofeud, Neofeud 2, when Neofeud 1 goes on sale, and that kind of stuff like that. Also, you can follow Terminus C. Terminus C is Terminus Cyberstar, a low-poly cyberpunk immersive sim in the vein of late 90s PC games like Deus Ex and System Shock 2. I am the content director / lead writer on this game. It is a game that is it is completed the development of all of the content for the game, at least part 1 of it. It's basically an entire game. It's a huge place. It's many hours at least. We're now moving on to art optimization and content testing. The first gameplay video is coming soon, so I'm very much looking forward to this. Yeah, I often talk about Call of Colonialism. Now in the game, I have written the fictional game that exists within the world of Cyberpunk 2077 called Call of Colonialism, which is literally, I mean, the United States has a game called Call of Duty, which is about making sure people are propagandized to sign up for the U.S. military and practice killing brown and black people for resources. And so Call of Colonialism is the satirical game that now formally exists in this 3D cyberpunk world. So I'm very happy to see that. All the screenshots are really this is like it's much bigger and better than I could have hoped for, really. As the person who dreamt all of this up in a like 200,000 word text file, seeing it come to life is really amazing. And so really happy they're doing really good. If you want to follow this game, Terminus Cyberstar at Terminus C, you can join the Discord Terminus for Terminus Cyberstar right there. All right. Okay. So I have a panel very soon. I got to get out of here. So oh yeah. I got a couple, just real quick. Make sure I get these shout outs. Yeah. Don't forget, you can follow also Positive Synergy, _1983, another native Hawaiian, doing very important educational work, making really cool music, really based music, including this album called Perfecting Perfection, dealing with land back, dealing with undoing of imperialism and colonialism and capitalism from a native Hawaiian perspective. Very good music, very excellent message. Definitely check it out. And somebody please become Positive Synergies Patreon patron. Yes. Google Positive Synergy. I think it's positivesynergy.bandcamp.com. Yeah. So go to patreon.com/positivesynergy and become a Patreon patron to also support Positive Synergy's work in an ongoing fashion. Thanks very much. Anyways, you can also follow Holly Arjun. Holly, of course, is my partner at the Tech Ferry, producer and writer, mod VA and partner in making of children and in marriage, and of course in also the business as well of Silver Spook Games, and producer and writer of The Goblin Mother, a variety show of misfits, monsters, and really cool music and puppets and all kind of fun entertainment. If you like E. American Johnson and Luna and Nanka Pete, this may be of interest because there's lots of similar sorts of SCA energy, let's say, a lot of drama nerd energy. At Magic Storytime is another show that Holly works on. It is a Twitch stream magic show that Holly works on, and Holly also, of course, is the parent of 2 Kiki, the primary caregiver here at the Silver Spook Hui as well for them. So follow all these people, and thank you so much everybody for watching. Thanks all these Patreon patrons for your support. It is really appreciated again. Thanks a lot to Big Teal for tuning in there. I hope that I'm glad this is a stream that you can be awake for because it's at an appropriate time of day for you. And thanks Holly for modding, of course. And yeah, thank you very much for all these Patreon patrons for your ongoing support. It is massively appreciated. Otherwise, if you don't have any Patreon patrons, there might not be any more Silver Spook streams. So it really helps to make sure that we keep going with this process, because the electricity, internet, and the time to pay for all that stuff costs money and it takes time. So thank you very much. All right, have a good one. We'll be back. Don't forget. Oh yeah, finally, we'll be back in about 50 minutes. Oh shit, yeah. Being Alt, Goth, and PLC on the other Twitch channel. So get ready for that one. It's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be very. We'll talk more about Queen of the Dam there, I'm sure. All right. Until next time, keep remembering. Oh, Lua. Yeah, I gotta go. Keep your marriage plus, be excellent to each other, and yeah, just remember the mother of universal healthcare and the originator of human civilization itself was non-white women, possibly goth. I can't confirm